All right. We are live. I was actually going to try to use a different live streaming software tonight. I was going to try and use Riverside for those who like the behind the scenes stuff, but I couldn't figure out how to get Riverside to connect to an existing already scheduled live stream on YouTube, and I didn't want to change the link. So here we are back on the usual software eCam for tonight, but I think we have a lot to talk about, much more smart home related than obviously my video production. I do want to give you kind of an update of what on earth's been going on with my YouTube production and why haven't you seen any videos from me. I kind of equate it to something like the chip shortage that happened with automobiles. There's a back in, two or 3 years ago. And like the chip shortage with automobiles, there's a lot of different things that all kind of came together to make for one big issue, which is just that I haven't been able to get any videos finished. I've still been working really hard on lots of videos for you guys. So, I have a number of them coming very soon. Probably my next video will come the beginning of next week. And then after that, it should be back to regular pace. There's, just to kind of quickly sum up what happened, I took on a new role in my job, and that meant I was kind of working 2 jobs at work instead of one as I transitioned between teams, and we had the end of the fiscal year for everything too. And so that made my work days very packed and tiring. So I come home just not as energized to work on smart home tech as I usually am when I just have normal pace of work. And then also I had a lot of videos that took a lot more time, and I hit a bunch of technical problems that kind of blocked all of my videos all at once. So I have a bunch of those solved, some issues figured out that I think will kind of come, the stories behind that will come in future videos. But all of that just has made for, and then combined with that, my kids were sick, my wife's car had a bunch of issues, there's been all kinds of other little things that usually don't, contribute to any kind of slowdown. But I'm going to start working with an editor. I'm working with an editor now to edit some of the videos. So hopefully that'll keep some of the pace of production a little more consistent. And when things in the future like this happen, I'll be sort of more ahead of schedule with getting videos out. Because what you may or may not realize is a lot of my videos, compared to most YouTubers you see, probably, especially at a bigger size scale, the video filming process might start weeks before the video is actually published. And for me, oftentimes it was like I would write, film, edit the video all at once. And it wasn't ideal. I knew it wasn't ideal. I know it's not ideal, but it was just kind of how things worked for me. And I'm needing to get to the point where I need to start backing up my schedule and getting more ahead. And that's what I've been doing over these past few weeks. I've been getting more and more video stuff in the pipeline. So hopefully the supply chain of videos, so to speak, will be more set up well for success. So anyways, it's good to see everybody in the chat. Good to catch up. We have a lot of smart home news and Apple news to talk about tonight. So let me say hi to some of you guys. Saul, hey, from Hilton Head. Good to see you. James from Las Vegas. Some regulars here. Nice to see you guys here. William, of course. Yes, having a good night. Brian, nice to see you. Robert, all the way from Australia, I think usually. Nice to see you here. Got the Formula One Australian Grand Prix coming up in Melbourne not too long from now. Good evening, Robert. Zane, good evening, Zane. I loved your good morning, I guess, where you're based. I loved, Zane, your suggestion on Shane's live stream the other day about getting myself, George, and Shane together on some kind of live stream, whether it's Shane's or my live stream. We're talking behind the scenes to make something like that happen. So you'll probably see some point in the future the three of us get together on a stream together, which would be a lot of fun. Buddy, nice to see you. Yeah, and that's a good question, Robert. How long is your process for video production? I mean, there's usually testing of the product, which is like the big focus, right? Or like installing it. And that could be very quick if I'm trying to get a video out fast, but it could also be a number of weeks or months, depending on the nature of like how tight the deadline is. If I'm working with a sponsor, there's always like a little bit more timeline because you have to run certain things like the integrated segment of the video or other things by the sponsor. Or if it's a completely sponsored video, then they get to, review that before it actually gets posted. So there's that can add a little bit of time. But then usually, yeah, like I'm saying now, like I'm working on videos right now that probably won't post for about a month, but I'm also having to adjust my schedule and the way I make videos so that I'm doing, a lot more doing multiple videos at once. So I've always kind of had multiple videos going at once, but I need to do that more so that I have more options and more things to go. And there are so many exciting topics to discuss in the coming weeks and months. It's going to be a very fun March and April. Just lots of cool products, lots of cool smart home tech that's already come out, and some that has yet to come out. Shane, nice to see you there from South Carolina. Yes, last time. Shane, of course, was a guest here on the podcast. So, yeah, good to see you here, Shane. And if you aren't familiar with the channel already, go check it out. Shane, also thank you for posting some great shorts and reels about our last live stream. I plan to start doing a little more of that from here. William and Hall in Tech from Central New York. Nice to see you here. And then William from Ontario, Canada. Yeah. Good question, Robert. How many of us, sorry for the not Formula One fans here, but how many races will Lewis Hamilton win this year? I think Lewis Hamilton's big comeback year where he gets a championship is going to be more in 2026 with the regulation changes and maybe Ferrari's new drivetrain. So I'm going to say he wins a handful of races and kind of is in the running for the title, but I don't think he's going to beat out Lando. I bet Lando's going to win the championship this year. We'll see. But I think people will be surprised at how not as high Lewis is, and I think people will also be surprised how much my favorite driver, Carlos Sainz, is actually much higher than people expect despite him being in a Williams car. I mean, at least by preseason testing, looks pretty promising. So we'll see. I haven't been watching, obviously, much Formula One because I've been working on videos, but we have an exciting season ahead, and Drive to Survive from documenting the last season is coming out on Netflix tomorrow on Friday. So if you're thinking about Formula One, you've heard about Formula One, and you want like something to kind of get you primed or into it, Drive to Survive on Netflix is a great show. It's what got me into it years ago, and it's basically a documentary. You've seen probably some of these sports documentaries that follow the stories behind the athletes and what they're trying to do, and so Drive. We'll put this up on the screen, and then we'll get on. We have so much smart home tech stuff, but I keep getting sidetracked here. So this is Drive to Survive. So new season comes out tomorrow, but it's over on Netflix. But going back to the kind of big story of this week in the smart home space. I mean, there's a handful of like new products and things. Maris has a new I think it was Ecobee and Maris have released relatively recently some new smart thermostats that we might get into as well. And then we have, Shane had a video on the SwitchBot adjustable smart shades. I won't be checking those out on my channel, but I think it's a cool product just to call out here that might work for you if you're looking for shades and you want to move out of your current apartment and keep your shades. But Alexa Plus. So I think even if you don't care about Amazon at all and you're really more like into Apple smart home tech, and you have qualms with Amazon for one reason or another, you're right. I mean, you picked Team Apple, I guess you could say, for your smart home. I still think there's a lot of interesting implications about Amazon's announcement of Alexa Plus, especially what Panos Panay, as you know, if you follow this channel for a while, I'm a fanboy of his. I think seems to be a pretty impressive executive from his track record at Microsoft and then what he's doing now at Amazon in their smart home division. But he had a good interview with Nilay Patel at The Verge on the Decoder podcast earlier this week. Here, I'll go ahead and pull up that article here on the screen. There's an article paired with then, of course, the podcast episode. But one of the interesting points that he brings up in this interview, and it's come up in a variety of the press around this event, other places, is just the idea that, like, one of the key things that Amazon figured out that'll enable them to make this announcement is handling what's called a mixture of experts, or there are a bunch of different terms, I think, for it in the AI space, but it's basically being like, the user just gave me this request and I can interpret it, but then what should I do with it? And there's certain sort of specific AIs that are more tailored to specific things, right? There might be something for adjusting the lighting in your home. There might be another one for managing your music. And there might be another one for managing your photo library or your calendar. And each of those AIs has their own sort of context windows focused on their own things. And depending on the request, you give the assistant it in a matter of fractions of a second needs to be able to figure out which experts, or, if you think about these, like, he uses the term experts, which can kind of be confusing if you're not familiar with kind of some of that stuff, or it could be, could think of them, I think Nilay said in the podcast, think of them almost like apps that kind of are, but like, what pieces of the puzzle does this AI need to put together? And it seems to be a very difficult problem, and one that really not a lot of companies have put together. If you think about like an AI chat window, right? So you're using an AI chat bot of some kind, could be any of them. You're doing that yourself, right? You're creating the prompt about all the different context about your particular thing you want AI to write or solve or research for you, whatever it is. And then you do all that context, put it into text, and then give it to the AI. And obviously behind the scenes, a lot of these bigger chat models have some kind of mixture of experts thing, or at least from my vague understanding, like these kind of things happen behind the scenes, but I think it's a little bit easier when it's sort of like, oh, this is a particular topic within this realm of research, right? We're going to research this topic and research this topic. But when it's so many disparate things like calendar and photos and smart home, I think that problem is really challenging. And I think it's also a sign of, because Amazon has sort of demoed it but not released it, and no one else has really talked about this kind of a thing. I think a lot of people look at Apple and look at the fact that, 18.4 doesn't have advanced Siri. And, when are we going to get the advanced Apple Intelligence stuff that they demoed back at WWDC? I think, Panos talked about in the interview just what a difficult problem this is to solve. And I think that so many, I think Apple's probably facing the same challenges, right? That locally on your phone, the intelligent request that's using, what Mark Gurman has talked about is behind the scenes that's going to be using app intents, which is basically very similar to Apple's shortcuts. So like you add a shortcut action to a shortcut, that's running, in modern code, if it's an up-to-date API with shortcuts, that's running an intent behind the scenes. And so I think that all of that is going to be kind of put together in Apple's AI to figure out, okay, the user asked me this, what pieces do I want to assemble to make that answer for the user or do that task for the user? And I just think that eventually Apple has a lot of smart people. I'm sure they'll figure it out, but it made me more comforted on the whole idea of Apple's behind an AI. I mean, maybe they are, but I think we're just in the early days of the game. And I think the things they're trying to do are trying to solve, because they already have a lot of sort of language model stuff with their existing Apple Intelligence features. And I think what they're trying to solve with this next leap of Siri is something that really a lot of the industry hasn't really figured out yet either. So Apple's right there at the forefront figuring it out, maybe a little bit different way than some of the others, doing local and more privacy focused and, private cloud compute and all this stuff. But still like very much, I think, maybe more cutting edge than some of the press would lead us to believe. So, yes, Brian is a good way to describe it. Contextualizing the user's request. Oh, and interesting, Robert's sharing here that he uses the Amazon platform. And I'm sorry, I think I've said that word a few times, but as Robert says in Modern Day Tech, another frequent viewer and great channel says, it refers to it as Lady A. Not interested in Plus. I can see that. And also another good morning from the Philippines. Hey, Art, thanks for joining. I like how it's included with Amazon Prime. Yeah, I agree, Holland Tech. I think I have Amazon Prime. I have one of the big 21-inch Echoes. I talked about it on my channel last year with the Smart Display episode. I think they're really cool. I am interested to play with this new version of their voice assistant, but I'm not thinking necessarily it's going to be a slam dunk in terms of actual practical use. I think sometimes so far, a lot of these things that try to intuit what you want based off of a request you give, it's hard to trust that they will get it right. Not to say that Amazon can't prove us all wrong and do something that actually is that good that it can solve that, but I think it remains to be seen how that actually all works out. So we'll see about that. But there is one other side of this whole Amazon interview with Panos that I want to talk about as it relates to Apple, and maybe more on the sort of the downside for Apple. Yes, hello, Glee from Raleigh, North Carolina. Good to see you. And John, thanks for joining. Another regular here. So I think one of the interesting things that Panos talked about in the interview and that he's done at Amazon is reorganize his whole division of, like, I think it's devices and services or whatever at Amazon, all around ALEXA. And so he has an ALEXA, engineering division and an ALEXA, Alexa, product division. And the products, of course, if you work in tech, product is generally more like, how do you make something that people want to buy? What's the target market? Kind of like the businessy side of like making something in tech. And then, of course, engineering is how do we make it actually work? And so much of his team sort of focuses on this. And that he said, and I pulled this quote from the podcast episode. He was mentioning in there that all of Amazon is rallying around Alexa. And sorry, that's hopefully the last time I say that word. But it's, I don't think you could say the same thing about Siri and Apple. I think that, all of Apple probably rallies around the iPhone and has since the first iPhone came out. And there are certainly other products that take Apple a lot of effort to ship and a lot of, in the business speak, like cross-functional teams that all work together to make some product come to life. And, it's one of the things that makes Apple great is their ability to pull people together like that. But I think that folks at Apple don't view the iPhone as, it's hardware for Siri. They view it as it's the iPhone. Or, we just released a bunch of new Macs. And they talk about Apple Intelligence very much in their marketing, of course, with everything they do these days. But I think it's much more in like it has this feature, almost like, and it's carbon neutral, it supports the environment, and it has Apple Intelligence, and it's has, the latest Apple Silicon processor, like checkbox, 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 rather than, here's our new Macs for accessing Apple Intelligence, and here's our new, and obviously, for most of us, how we'd use a Mac or iPhone, that's not how we'd use a Mac or iPhone. Like, I personally don't use Apple Intelligence all that much. I don't think what Apple's done so far is really all that like world, life-changing unless you haven't used a lot of other AI tools already. And, it's nice to have them built in and made from Apple, but I don't think it's that groundbreaking. So I just think it's interesting that it makes me wonder how much will Amazon be able to get more of this stuff done and shipped and figure out some of these hard problems because their entire like bigger portions of the company. Obviously, Amazon has a lot of the company that's not at all related to this. Your local Amazon distribution center probably isn't focused on these same problems. But how much is some company like Amazon, who's more focused on this singular idea of that they're a platform company supporting this one kind of platform, how much is that going to make them advance faster than Apple, because Apple is more of a product company and more like these services are sort of like, even though they're growing and they're an important part of the stock, they're still sort of like the thing that we can use to make money off of people when they're not buying our products, right? They make money first by people buying the products and then second off of the services. So we'll see. But just different thoughts that I had this week over the latest news on Alexa. But I said it again. There we go. But we're done with that segment, so I won't say it again. But oh, yes, you can check out the replay. And look who also is back. I think he still might be at large in Miami. George, nice to see you here. Glad you're joining, especially from vacation, I think, still. So hope you get home safely soon. Oh, yeah. And sorry, John. Now I see from Shane's reply. But yeah, there's a replay. And then Shane also has a bunch of shorts over on his channel you can check out as well to get some of the highlights. But it was basically, that was 2 weeks ago now, after we both had released our Aqara G5 videos. So also, if you're interested in the Aqara G5, we get into that there. We also got into, in that last stream, some sort of behind the scenes of doing YouTube over the years and looking back on some of the good old times, but also, where things are going. So a lot of good conversation there last live stream 2 weeks ago. So we talked about Amazon's big event and how it might relate or not to Apple. Of course, Apple had some things happening this week with their new products announced. Not really smart home related, so I won't really spend a lot of time on them, but I do want to get to just some of the high-level stuff. Of course, there's the new MacBook Air. A lot of the reviewers and things are talking about just how much of a better deal it is now that Apple lowered the price a little bit. So if you're in the market if you know someone who's in the market for MacBook Air, the new ones are going to be a really great deal. Definitely worth getting. It could be a good computer to upgrade to if you're in need of an upgrade and don't really do a lot of heavy duty, software development, video editing, other stuff. Could be nice. If you need heavy duty, the Mac Studio is interesting because they released the M3 Ultra. Of course, M4 is the latest processor generation. The really interesting part, and I'm sure some other places will go way more in depth on this, is that apparently Apple confirmed to a European news outlet, I can't remember which one, and I didn't find the quote or like a post about it to pull up here, but that they didn't make the key piece to make an Ultra chip of the M4. There's this part of the Apple Silicon chips going up to the M3 where the Max version of the chip has something called an interposer, and it's a bunch of really crazy, fancy tech that's basically allows for two M3 Maxes to connect and form an Ultra. And it's not separate M3 Maxes. I think it's like all fabbed together as one piece. But it's sort of, but either way, you come out with a chip that's two M3 Maxes put together, or an M2 Ultra is two M2 Maxes put together. And so apparently there might be no way for them to do that with an M4 Max. So we might never see an M4 Ultra, at least as we know it from like the standard architecture they've done in the past. Maybe it's a completely new chip design they come out with later. Maybe they do something else. Maybe they don't decide they don't need an M4 Ultra. We'll see. A lot of people have been hoping that Apple would make an M4 Ultra to really compete with the highest end NVIDIA graphics processing. But maybe that's taking them to a different approach than what they've done with the past ones. But either way, this new Mac Studio looks like an amazing upgrade for folks who want that. I have, the MacBook Pro is plenty for me. I like the portability. I don't want to do a Mac Studio. I don't tend to do a lot of my work in the same place all the time. But if you do, man, this is amazing. And I talked about this on Threads. A bunch of people chimed in, of course, with their thoughts. It was a really popular Threads post for me, but about the 512 gigabytes of RAM. Sorry, I shouldn't say RAM. It's memory, as I said in the post, because it's shared between, of course, the video and the graphics card and the CPU, unified memory, as Apple calls it. But 512 gigabytes, it's ridiculous. I mean, someone mentioned in my replies, I think the Intel Mac Pro back in the day could get like 1.5 terabytes of RAM. So you can get higher, but it's just it'd be really nice for, back to our previous conversation about AI. I'm sure there's some AI researchers or other things that could really benefit from all that RAM. Either way, pretty cool to see Apple shipping a computer with that much power in it, and it makes me wonder what's going to happen to the Mac Pro. But I don't know. That's not really something I'm too focused on myself. Cool. So yeah, we got some Ultra fans, and the only way I think to get an Ultra is either in the Mac Studio or the Mac Pro. Of course, the latest one is only currently in the Mac Studio. Glad to hear you love your M2 Ultra, buddy. I have heard it's an amazing chip. I know some other people who have them, and they're just they fly through video exports and anything graphical. They just blow out of the water because you have all those cores. Yeah, 512 gigabytes, as Robert's saying. It's pretty big. And it's also, the crazy thing I posted in my thread post was, here, maybe I'll pull this up, was just that it's a strange thing to, oh, whoops, I'm not signed in here. Never mind, I won't pull it up right now. But the Mac Studio entry level ships with 512 gigabyte SSD for storage. And then, of course, you can option that same computer up to that equivalent amount of memory. And I can't think of a computer that I know of that Apple has shipped that where you could do that, where you could. But, I mean, of course, someone chimed in my replies with the Mac Pro. The Intel Mac Pro is in that category. But it's pretty unusual to have a machine that you can, you could buy one configuration of it with that much SSD, or go all the way up to that in system memory. So pretty cool stuff. But we got some more smart home things to talk about. The smart thermostats. So Maris has their smart thermostat, which supports Matter. It does require a C-wire, and I think, didn't it just start shipping, or did I misunderstand when it started shipping? Oh, I guess it started shipping in January. Never mind. I had this in my head that it also shipped recently, but I think it's been a little while. So this is for those who are curious, this is the thermostat I was talking about, but I think it's already shipped. So the one that is new is the Ecobee thermostat. Is it Light? Or is Light the old version? Essential. Essential is the new one. So I saw this at CES, and I have some thoughts I mentioned in my CES video about this, which is this looks cool for Apple home users who want to use it with external sensors, because a lot of thermostats in this price range, they don't work with external sensors, which means that the temperature that the thermostat reads is basically what you control that zone or all of your home with. And on the flip side, with the multiple sensors and being able to attach those to the thermostat, then you can heat and cool your home based off of a room that tends to get warmer or cooler than where the thermostat actually is. Oftentimes, a thermostat will be in a hallway or something, not a great gauge of temperature in the actual bedrooms, let's say, where you have windows and other things. It's just a bigger room maybe that could influence it. So really nice to have a thermostat at $130 where you'd have to buy the temperature sensors separately or already have them from maybe an additional Ecobee that you already use, but you could then add those to this unit. But the big downside here to keep in mind is that it doesn't support Matter. And well, it does support Apple Home and a lot of other smart home ecosystems. So, it's not the end of the world that doesn't support Matter. But if you're into things, I would be more keen on making sure you have Matter support if you're someone who's into or considering getting into things like a Homey Pro or a Home Assistant, some of the more newer versions of like a Home Assistant Green or something that has any of the Home Assistant boxes that you can run that support being a Matter controller. Also, Homey being a Matter controller. Or things like if you want to do some automations in Aqara hubs as a Matter controller. The benefit is that Ecobee doesn't have to make an integration with any of those companies. Some people have already, I think, for Ecobee, for Homey, and for Home Assistant as well. So it's a little bit of a moot point with Ecobee, but it right now those integrations exist. But, it's something where it's like, and I'm kind of going off of memory on those integrations, so I might not be entirely correct there. But what the principle I think still stands, which is that some company could make a product, and if it's Matter compatible, you'll always be able to tie it to whatever Matter controller you want. And it could be one of these cool, more advanced smart home platforms like Home Assistant or Homey. And so if you want to be able to have that option, you really want to make sure you buy Matter products. If you don't, then you're reliant on some kind of other integration working with those, like a custom integration with the Ecobee thermostat. And with Ecobee, it's likely that will continue, but you never know. The company could shut anything like that off down the road. But chances are, if they support Matter, they're going to continue to support Matter. And so that will always be a way that all these other systems could control your thermostat or whatever other smart home products. So I think it's just something to consider as you're looking at things that add Matter and not. Of course, if something supports Apple Home, you might think, well, I don't need Matter. But I think it's important to remember that if you want to integrate with more advanced software in Homey or Home Assistant or something else, Matter could be a really big advantage and kind of future-proof whatever hardware you're getting. So that's the Smart Thermostat Essential. And we talked about the SwitchBot adjustable shades. So I came in tonight well rested. I think the last live stream I had, I was running on not that much sleep after finishing the Aqara video. And I also had some other stuff going on at work that week. So I was going pretty tired. But yes. Okay. I got to get to this chat because it seems out of control right now. And let me figure out what's going on. So George here talking about Maris boycott 2025. And I'm trying to remember exactly why George would have said that. But yeah, definitely. And nice. Robert has 6 sensors for his Ecobee thermostat. That's pretty cool. And you can also, by the way, do the same kind of thing with Nest. So I have a Nest learning thermostat and some of their Nest higher end thermostats. And that's a disadvantage of Nest if you're looking at that price range of the Ecobee Essential, is that I think Nest, some of their lower end thermostats do not support their sensors. I know their learning thermostat does, but of course then you're in a whole other ballpark of price. How does it actually control the HVAC in the home based on what sensors read? Example, 3 floors. Is it just the 3rd floor sensor is still too low, so to keep the heat on? That's a good question, John. So I think it's a little bit more complex with Ecobee than it is necessarily with Nest, but so I haven't used an Ecobee thermostat in about maybe like 6 months now, but it's with Nest, you can specifically say, I want you to heat and cool the home with this particular sensor. And by that, it means that just pretend that that external sensor is the sensor in the thermostat, right? Like you buy most thermostats, they'll have a temperature sensor, I think often built into the unit. And then that's the temperature it uses to measure heating and cooling the home. If the temperature falls below a certain value, of course, it'll turn on the furnace. If it goes above a certain value, it'll turn on the air conditioning, assuming you have both of those enabled or whatever in your thermostat, and then also physically there, of course. But then Ecobee does some interesting stuff where they will sort of auto-magically look at a bunch of the sensors and use the presence detection in some of their sensors to determine people are in these rooms. So we're going to look more or preference more the temperatures in those rooms rather than the thermostat, or maybe they'll use the thermostat to detect that. And Nest has a similar sort of intelligent mode. I tend to keep that turned off. But I don't think with Ecobee, by the way, that I might have misspoken earlier because I'm thinking back to using Ecobee. I don't think there's a way like Nest to specifically say, and someone can correct me if in the chat as a more recent Ecobee user, but there's no way to specifically say, hey, Ecobee, I just want you to heat and cool the home based off of the bedroom temperature sensor and ignore all other sensors, ignore the one on the thermostat, just use the bedroom and sort of like manually override it. I don't think there's a way to do that. You can do that with Nest, but yeah. And to be honest though, too, with Nest, I've kind of just leaned more into just letting the thermostat figure a lot of that stuff out now. We have multiple of those temperature sensors, and I tend to just let the thermostat kind of go on full auto mode there. So I don't really use it as much as I used to. But we'll see what happens there. If I decide to change that or what, but anyways, that's my understanding. Okay. Yes. This is the Maris story. Okay. Oh, yes, I remember. Yes, now I remember this. Okay. Yes, so our friend was quoted as saying something that okay. I think, not quoted, but yeah, like they had you on the website, I think, at one point, right, Shane? And that was the problem. Anyways, so I've forgotten about that story. So thank you, chat room, for reminding me of that. And definitely downside of Maris, however you say it. I actually haven't really used a lot of their products anyway. They do have a presence sensor that's kind of equivalent to Akara's, but you might hear about that from me on the channel, but we'll see. Okay, cool. So it sounds like John understands vaguely where I'm coming from. I think these days, these thermostats are getting smarter and smarter. You're probably fine just leaning on the full auto mode, but I think at least for sometimes I know with Nest you can, although the Google the Google interface for Nest changes. I haven't I don't remember. Maybe they've. Anyways, I probably need to check on all of this and come back next week following up on all the details of thermostat temperature sensors because I need to refresh my memory on some of that stuff. When it comes on a home, 1910 doesn't have central air. Are you able to connect a smart thermostat? I'm considering one. That's an interesting question, William. So Obviously, anything from 1910 or even, most of the 20th century probably wouldn't wire up to a smart thermostat, but it really relies on your furnace board. So, from now, the problem with HVAC stuff is there's like a bunch of different types of systems. And so if you go through setting up one of these smart thermostats through the wizard, it'll be like, do you have this? Do you have that? Do you have this? Do you have that? So I am not a like HVAC expert to be able to tell you like all the things a smart thermostat can and can't support. But from my experience, which is limited, it goes down to your furnace board, and it's like there's like a series of colored wires, right, that like connect the furnace board up to the thermostat. And most smart thermostats these days, except for some Nest thermostats, require a C wire or a common wire to run some power. And then there's a bunch of other terminals depending on the type of hardware you have connected to your board for, whether it's a furnace, air conditioning, a boiler, whatever else. So that's really, I think, more than anything, what matters is like what systems you have that could be controlled by sort of modern equipment or not. And that's up to like a HVAC professional pro to tell you. And then what of that could be wired through to your thermostat. So yeah, I wouldn't preclude it. I wouldn't rule it out. I think it's probably something to consider, but it's just a matter of, if you have like, I need to go tomorrow or sometime soon, I need to schedule my inspection for my air conditioning before we turn it on for the spring. But usually like that's a great time if you have them out to just inspect your other stuff. Like, hey, so I'm thinking about getting a smart thermostat. What do you think? And it was also really interesting to talk to my local, I use Bartlett Heating and Air. They're amazing here in the Illinois, Chicago suburbs if you need that here. And they don't pay me to say that, obviously. They're great. But they recommend Ecobee all the time for smart thermostats, and they install lots of Ecobee stuff. And the guy who came out in the fall, he hadn't seen my new Nest thermostat until that visit. And so I thought it was, he thought it was really cool looking, but of course they don't really install too many Nest thermostats. I thought it was interesting that it seems like, talking to some other people too, that a lot of HVAC pros tend to really like Ecobee. But then I heard one other conflicting story that, of course, people have opinions. Other professional HVAC folks don't like Ecobee. So I'm sure everybody has their own opinions out there. And maybe some of you in the chat know more about it. But yeah. Oh, water bottle 365. No worries, man. Nice to see you. Or sorry, I don't know if you're, but no worries. Great to see you here. Yeah, I agree. The external temperature sensors is more of a comfort thing, and you can always change your automations to, or temperature target. Various ways to change the temperature just to like bump it up a few degrees, because you know that you're going to be sleeping at night in the bedroom and it's always cold or hot. So you want to bump the temperature up or down, a few degrees. It's not, that part isn't rocket science. You don't need the external sensors, but, yeah, anyways. Cool. Thank you, Water Bottle 365. So any other questions, things to get to? We've been going through a lot tonight. I've taken us on a lot of tangents. We talked a lot about HVAC, which I wasn't anticipating. We have a lot to look forward to coming up. I'm really excited about this year. Just so much good stuff happening in the smart home space. Oh yeah, and that's a good point. I was kind of implying this, but like most HVAC techs won't have any idea about how smart. Yeah. They know how to install the box, right, and get it set up, but then it's up to you to add to your smart home or whatever. Oh yeah, and a zone system. Yeah, that's true. I'm sure there are all kinds of different, and that's a thing. Like, I was talking to someone about a single zone system, so in a smaller home. So I probably wasn't even in the target market for any kind of fancy stuff like what you're talking about, Doug. But yeah, I mean, it's a dangerous part of that topic. It's just like so many homes and so many different parts of the country and the world are so different in how they heat and cool that it's just like, I don't know. I'm sure like there could be I don't know if it would get a lot of views because it probably wouldn't be all that interesting, but like you could make an entire YouTube channel, I bet, about just like smart heating and cooling homes and all the different tech behind it. I know another YouTuber who does a lot of cool stuff around this kind of idea in the eco-friendly sense, is Undecided with Matt Farrell. He has a lot of cool videos on his carbon neutral home and, all these different ways to heat and cool homes and give them electricity and stuff. So definitely smart home tech, but just not as much like automations like we talk about, but more like how do I use the latest technology to make my home as least harmful to the environment as possible. So yeah, I'll pull up his channel here. Definitely a cool channel to check out if you haven't already. Yeah, so Matt Farrell. So great stuff here. And I don't know why some of these, anyways, I think I'm, all right. Enough on that. Sorry, I'm thinking out loud here. I looked into smart air vents, went down the rabbit hole. Oh, that's an interesting thing because I've been playing with that too. There's a, Robert, that's something that I've like, haven't really had much to say yet about. And I'm kind of, maybe this is the last you'll hear about it on my channel. I don't know. Let's just put it that way. But I did go ahead and buy, thanks to your support, this one of these cozy home air vents. And basically it's just an air vent that has a fan in it. And maybe this, Robert, is what you're talking about. Because we've had some issues in like one or two of the air vents, especially in one of our kids' bedrooms, just getting enough, particularly in the summer, enough cool air up there. And I thought, oh, we'll just, play with one of these and see how it works. We haven't really gotten to the weather where it would really benefit us. So, it's mostly just been a toy for my kids to press the button on and watch the Cozy Home logo light up in different colors and then be told by me to stop doing that. So it hasn't really served its purpose yet. I don't really have a lot to say on it yet. It does work in Apple Home just fine. It's basically like two computer fans stuck in an air vent. So, and then of course with some smart home connectivity. And they can be overall pretty quiet. Of course, if you turn it to the highest level, it sounds like a gaming PC or something like that. Like it definitely can rev up a little bit of sound. But in a bedroom where maybe you want some of that white noise at night, it's not the end of the world in my view. But yeah, they're fine. But I don't know if it's something I'd recommend necessarily. But it was kind of a clever idea I wanted to play with, but yeah, and this is obviously, as they're saying here, it's like a cheaper, less fancy version of maybe what Robert's talking about. So, and we got Mr. Snowblower himself, Mr. well, I shouldn't say Mr. Yarbo because I don't know what you'll have to say about it, Brandon. But I've been watching all your short form content on the Yarbo snowblower. I reposted it on Threads earlier this week. Pretty exciting, Brandon, that you have one of those and have had some snow to play with. But yeah, good to see you here. Thanks for joining. It does not come in black, I don't think. Just white. Sorry, Brian. That was the air vent I was just talking about. Okay. I use a smart cocoon fan via Wi-Fi. Huh. Cool. Oh, wow. I have a chilled water system with FC. Okay, cool. Cara S3 thermostat. Nice. Yeah, Akara's bringing that new like temperature control panel thing to the US. Like it's like a temperature sensor, which they've had before, and then some matter buttons on the side. I wonder if Akara will ever do a thermostat in the US. We'll see. They're making all kinds of other products. Be fun to see them try that. But yeah, and speaking of cool content on Instagram, and I think YouTube Shorts, I don't remember, but George, I saw your place where you're staying in Miami looks really cool. So I'm flattered that you'd spend this much time with us when you have so much cool stuff around you that in some ways might be more exciting, but Okay, so you cannot constrict the output of the system, so your control system has to guard against. Okay. I don't know if I fully understand all of that, and that's why I don't work on HVAC systems myself. Oh, cool. An Apple Home Palm Lock. Nice. Yeah, I know Shane was talking about the Palm locks on his channel yesterday. The problem I have with this is maybe is enough of a rant on my thoughts on this for closing out the night. So, there are a number of companies that make these smart locks that have all kinds of stuff crammed into a smart lock. And in some ways, it's cool to see like the march of technology and like all the stuff that can be fit into a smart lock. And there can be some practical reasons, right? A lot of the creative ways to unlock your front door, whether it's your face or your palm or even just your finger, like they'll advertise with a person with hands full of groceries or whatever else, or children or other things, or a pet or whatever. And it makes sense, right? You have stuff in your hands. You want to get inside your home. You don't want to fumble with keys. You don't want to, you might not be wearing an Apple Watch. Mine's charging upstairs right now, but you might not, have easy access to something like HomeKey. And so it practically makes some sense, but I just think these things don't look very good on your front door. And I think that's, no matter how much engineering, hey, Modern Day Tech, nice to see you here, Eric. Thanks for joining. But yeah, so no matter how much like product design, I don't think Apple is ever going to make a smart lock with a camera built in. And that's basically what you need for all of this stuff. And I know the battery life is pretty good on a lot of these, but that just makes the product bigger too. And so I just pulled up Lockly's page because I think they're kind of an example of this. And, who knows? I might try some of these locks in the future and be just like blown away, but I'm much more of a fan of something that looks sleek and is smaller and has less features. So that's kind of my view on smart locks. I think the concept of a palm lock is cool. I see some of these locks and Eufy's the same, and I just kind of wonder, here's the Palm Lock S3 Max, which I don't think officially supports Apple Home right now. But it's just it's a big piece of tech to put on your door, and it looks like it. it could be practical if you don't have a spot for a doorbell too. And, having the camera there is nice. So I'm not saying that it doesn't work for everybody, but I just don't get it. I would rather have a smaller smart lock that looks more like a normal lock, or even is just a smaller footprint, and put my smart tech elsewhere. But I don't know. That's just me. And maybe once I try one of these things, my mind will be blown and I'll be changed in thinking that it's actually like really well worth it. Oh, wait. And this is, okay, so I got confused because I don't think this works with Apple Home Key, but I guess it does work with Apple Home. Cool. Yes, that's a great point, Brandon. Well said. Here, let me go back to the default scene and pull this up. So Brandon's saying, ultra wideband is better than facial, which is better than palm, which is better than Apple Home Key, which is better than fingerprint, which is better than a keypad, which is better than a key. Like that right there it sums it up. And I think describes exactly how I feel. And that's why I'm really excited for ultra wideband. U-Lock and Schlage and some others have some new locks coming this year with ultra wideband, and I think that'll be a really nice feature where basically you just walk up to the lock and it's unlocked because it knows you're there. And that's really smart technology, right? And very Apple-like, where it doesn't have to have a lot of physical hardware there to do that. It just, it does, but it's much more subtle than something like a camera. And then it unlocks. So, and John saying, I would argue that the key is needed regardless of all. Yeah, it's that's a good point. I don't think we're going to get away from physical keys anytime soon. As much as I don't really carry mine anymore during the day because I have enough smart locks or ways to get into my home. I don't need to carry a key, but we still have keys and we still give them to people who are coming to take care of our home when we're on vacation or whatever. But yeah. Yeah, that's true. I remember talking with you about this at CES, Eric. You don't know, some people don't always have their phone in their pocket. So, and that's okay. Brandon Touche, code for backup. Yes. Your face is always, handsome face is always with you. For sure, Eric. That's funny. All right. Well, thank you guys so much for joining. It's been a fun night. I am getting kind of tired here, and I used to leave you guys with a YouTube video that I thought was fun to watch, but I've been so busy lately, I just haven't watched a lot of YouTube. So I'm sorry. But thank you so much for joining, and have a good night. Bye.